Your Honor, my wife can't even afford a lawyer. Derek Whitmore's voice echoed through the courtroom with theatrical pity, and Sienna felt every eye in the room shift to her empty counsel table. She sat alone. No lawyer, no files, no wedding ring anymore. Just her, a glass of water, and 3 years of marriage burning to ash in a federal courtroom in Charleston. Derek's attorney, a silver-haired shark named Patterson who charged $800 an hour, shuffled papers with the confidence of a man who'd already won. Behind Derek, his mother Gloria sat with her lips pressed into a satisfied line, and beside her, a woman Sienna recognized all too well. Megan, the mistress, wearing Sienna's anniversary earrings. Mrs. Whitmore has failed to secure legal representation, Patterson announced, as if Sienna weren't sitting 10 feet away. We move to expedite proceedings given her clear inability to contest. I can speak for myself. Sienna's voice cut through the room, quiet, steady. Derek laughed, actually laughed. Sweetheart, this is a courtroom, not your little craft blog. He turned to the judge with a rehearsed expression of concern. Your Honor, my wife has no legal training, no resources, and frankly, no understanding of what she's facing. I'm trying to be generous here, but she's making this difficult. Generous. The word hit Sienna like a slap. Generous was what Derek called it when he gave her an allowance from her own earnings. Generous was letting her visit her mother once a year. Generous was not hitting her where the bruises would show. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Harrison peered over her glasses, does the respondent wish to request a continuance to secure counsel? Before Sienna could answer, Derek jumped in. She's had 6 weeks, Your Honor. She's stalling. My client has a business to run, a life to rebuild. Patterson's voice dripped with false sympathy. We can't keep postponing because Mrs. Whitmore refuses to accept reality. Reality? Sienna almost smiled. None of them knew her reality. I don't need a continuance, Sienna said, rising to her feet. And I don't need a lawyer. Derek's smirk widened. Gloria whispered something to Megan, and both women giggled like teenagers at a slumber party. Your Honor, I'd like to request a 15-minute recess, Sienna continued. I'm expecting someone. Expecting someone, Derek threw his hands up. Who? Your book club. My mother. The room went quiet. Sienna watched Derek's face cycle through confusion, amusement, and finally settle on mockery. Your mother, he said it like a punchline. The woman who couldn't even come to our wedding, the mother you've seen, 3 times in a decade? Twice, actually, and only because Derek had controlled every aspect of her life, including when she could visit family. She's been busy, Sienna said simply. Busy? Derek shook his head, turning to the gallery like he was performing for an audience. Your Honor, this is a waste of the court's time. Her mother is nobody. Some retired schoolteacher from, where was it, honey? Nebraska. Vermont. Vermont. Right. A retired schoolteacher from Vermont is going to help her in a divorce proceeding against one of Charleston's most successful real estate developers. Derek's laugh was sharp, ugly. I almost feel sorry for her. Judge Harrison sighed. Mrs. Whitmore, I'll grant a 15-minute recess, but I expect you to be prepared to proceed when we reconvene. This court's time is valuable. Thank you, Your Honor. I won't waste it. As people began shuffling toward the exits, Derek crossed the aisle, leaning close enough that Sienna could smell his cologne. The same one he'd worn on their first date, the same one that now made her stomach turn. You're embarrassing yourself, he hissed. Just sign the papers, take the settlement, $20,000 and you walk away clean. $20,000. For 3 years of isolation. For every holiday spent alone while he worked late. For the time he threw her phone against the wall because her mother had called without permission. For the nights she slept on the bathroom floor because the bedroom door was locked from the outside. That's your final offer? Sienna asked. It's more than you deserve. His eyes flicked to Megan, who was reapplying lipstick in the gallery. You gave me nothing, Sienna. No children, no support, no. No backbone, Sienna finished. No fight. Derek's smile was venomous. Exactly. He walked away, and Sienna let him. She had learned something important in 3 years of marriage to Derek Whitmore. The loudest person in the room usually had the most to hide. And Derek was about to discover that silence was its own kind of weapon. The courthouse lobby buzzed with lawyers, plaintiffs, and bored security guards. Sienna found a bench near the window and checked her phone. One message. 5 minutes away, don't let them see you sweat. Mom. Sienna almost laughed. Her mother had never seen her sweat. Her mother had taught her at 7 years old how to look a bully in the eye without blinking, how to wait, how to win. She just hadn't had the chance to use those lessons in a very long time. Sienna. She looked up to find Derek's mother standing over her, dripping with false concern. Gloria. I just wanted to say, dear, that there are no hard feelings. Gloria clutched her pearls like a woman in a soap opera. Derek and I both want what's best for you. This settlement is very fair, considering. Considering what? Gloria's smile didn't waver. Considering you brought nothing to this marriage. No family connections, no assets, no breeding. Breeding. Sienna stood slowly, and something in her expression made Gloria step back. Tell me something, Gloria. In all these years, did Derek ever mention what my mother does for a living? Gloria waved a manicured hand. Some teaching position, wasn't it, before she retired? She's never been a teacher. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Gloria's face. Well, whatever she does, I'm sure it's very quaint. Quaint, Sienna nodded thoughtfully. I'll be sure to tell her you said that. The courthouse doors swung open. Every head in the lobby turned. A woman walked in, mid-60s, silver hair pulled into a perfect chignon, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Derek's car. Behind her trailed 3 people, a young man carrying 2 leather briefcases, a woman with a tablet and an earpiece, and a man in a dark suit who moved like security. The woman's heels clicked against the marble floor with the precision of a metronome. She walked directly to Sienna and pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. You look thin, Catherine Aldridge murmured. We'll fix that. Mom. Not here. Catherine pulled back, her blue eyes scanning the lobby like a general surveying a battlefield. Which one is he? Sienna didn't have to point. Derek was striding toward them, his lawyer jogging to keep up, his mother tottering behind on heels too high for a woman her age. Mrs. Whitmore, Derek's voice boomed with false charm. So glad you could finally join us. I'm Derek, Sienna's husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, of course. He extended his hand. I don't believe we've had the pleasure. Catherine looked at his hand, like it was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. No, she said coolly, we haven't. Derek's smile faltered. Well, I know this must be difficult for you. Your daughter and I just weren't compatible. But I want you to know I'm doing everything I can to make this transition smooth for her. Smooth, Catherine's voice could have frozen the Atlantic. That's one word for it. Mom, Sienna touched her mother's arm. Court's about to resume. Yes, Catherine's gaze swept over Derek one last time, dismissive as a queen examining a servant. I imagine it is. She turned and walked toward the courtroom, her team falling into step behind her. Derek stood frozen for a moment, then laughed, too loud, too forced. Well, she's certainly something. He straightened his tie. Too bad personality doesn't win court cases. No, Sienna agreed quietly. It doesn't. She followed her mother into the courtroom, leaving Derek staring after her with the first flicker of doubt he'd shown all day. The courtroom reconvened, exactly 15 minutes later. Judge Harrison barely glanced up from her papers. Mrs. Whitmore, are you ready to proceed? I am, Your Honor, Sienna stood, and I'd like to introduce my legal representation. Derek actually rolled his eyes. Your Honor, she just said she doesn't have a lawyer. The courtroom doors opened. A man walked in, tall, black, with graying temples and a presence that commanded immediate respect. He wore a 3-piece suit that fit like it had been sewn onto his body, and he carried a single leather folder with the Aldridge and Associates logo embossed in gold. Behind him came two associates, a paralegal and Sienna's mother, who took a seat in the front row of the gallery with the calm satisfaction of a chess player who had just called checkmate. "Apologies for the delay, Your Honor." The man's voice was rich and smooth. "Marcus Webb, senior partner at Aldridge and Associates. I'll be representing Mrs. Sienna Whitmore in this matter." The color drained from Derek's face. Patterson's pen clattered to the table. Even Judge Harrison looked up sharply. "Aldridge and Associates," the judge leaned forward. "The Aldridge and Associates from New York." "The same, Your Honor," Marcus smiled warmly. "Though we have offices in 12 countries now, Mrs. Aldridge prefers to keep things accessible." "Mrs. Aldridge." Derek's head swiveled to the gallery, where Catherine Aldridge sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap. "That's," his voice cracked, "that's Catherine Aldridge, the Catherine Aldridge." Sienna turned to look at her husband, her soon-to-be ex-husband, and felt something shift in her chest. For 3 years she had been small, quiet, invisible. Now she let herself smile. "You never asked what my mother did for a living, Derek." She tilted her head. "You assumed you knew." The silence in the courtroom lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Patterson shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is... We had no notice of opposing counsel. This is highly irregular." "Irregular?" Marcus Webb raised one eyebrow with the calm of a man who had argued before the Supreme Court and won. "My client informed Mr. Whitmore's counsel 6 weeks ago that she would be securing representation. It's hardly our fault they assumed otherwise. We were told she couldn't afford." "You assumed she couldn't afford?" Marcus opened his leather folder with surgical precision. "Assumptions are dangerous things in a courtroom, Mr. Patterson. I'd have thought a man of your experience would know that." Patterson's face turned an impressive shade of purple. Derek grabbed his lawyer's arm. "Do something," he hissed. "Object delay something." "On what grounds?" Patterson whispered back. "Having a better lawyer isn't a crime." "Order." Judge Harrison's gavel cracked against the bench. "Mr. Webb, while I appreciate Aldridge and Associates' reputation, I trust you'll conduct yourself according to the procedures of this court." "Of course, Your Honor." Marcus inclined his head with perfect respect. "We're merely here to ensure Mrs. Whitmore receives fair treatment, nothing more." "Fair treatment?" Derek found his voice, though it had climbed an octave. "Your Honor, this is intimidation. They're trying to bully me with what, Mr. Whitmore?" Judge Harrison's tone could have cut glass. "Competent legal representation. I assure you that's not grounds for dismissal." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. In the gallery, Gloria Whitmore had gone white as chalk. She was furiously typing on her phone, probably alerting the family's contacts, calling in favors, trying to find some way to level a playing field that had just tilted dramatically. Megan, meanwhile, looked confused. She leaned over to Gloria and whispered something, and Gloria swatted her away like a gnat. "Now then," Judge Harrison straightened her papers, "shall we proceed with the matter at hand? I believe we were discussing the proposed settlement." Marcus Webb smiled. "Actually, Your Honor, we'd like to submit a counter-proposal." He nodded to one of his associates, who stood and began distributing thick document packets to the judge, to Patterson, and with particular relish, to Derek himself. "What the hell is this?" Derek flipped through the pages, his face growing redder with each one. "That, Mr. Whitmore, is a comprehensive accounting of marital assets." Marcus clasped his hands behind his back. "Including several properties and accounts that were, shall we say, omitted from your initial disclosure." Patterson grabbed Derek's copy, scanning rapidly. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm to something approaching horror. "The house in the Caymans," Marcus continued pleasantly. "The investment account in Zurich. The shell company in Delaware that conveniently holds the deed to 3 commercial properties in downtown Charleston." He paused. "Did you think we wouldn't find them?" Derek stood so fast his chair crashed backward. "This is a violation of privacy. This is, you hacked into my accounts. We did nothing of the kind. Marcus's voice remained perfectly level. Your wife, Mr. Whitmore, was married to you for 3 years. She had access to your home office, your filing cabinets, your laptop that you so carelessly left logged in. He smiled thinly. She's not stupid, despite your apparent belief otherwise. She simply chose to wait until the appropriate moment to reveal what she knew. Sienna watched Derek's face cycle through a rainbow of emotions. Shock, fury, betrayal, and finally, fear. Real fear. For the first time since she'd known him, Derek Whitmore was afraid. Furthermore, Marcus continued, turning to the judge, we'd like to enter into evidence documentation of Mr. Whitmore's pattern of financial abuse during the marriage. Exhibit A, bank statements showing Mrs. Whitmore's salary deposits from her work as a freelance graphic designer being transferred to accounts solely in Mr. Whitmore's name. Exhibit B, credit card statements showing Mr. Whitmore's expenditures on his companion, using marital funds. Megan's head snapped up. Companion, she looked at Derek. You told me you were separated. You said the money was yours. Megan, shut up, Derek snarled. Exhibit C, Marcus's voice carried over the commotion. Documented evidence of coercive control, including but not limited to restricted access to transportation, monitored communications, and enforced isolation from family and friends. Judge Harrison's expression had grown increasingly cold as she reviewed the documents. Mr. Whitmore, these are serious allegations. They're lies, Derek's voice cracked. She's making all of this up. She's her mother's paying for this, buying her story. Actually, a clear voice cut through the room, I'm not paying for anything. Catherine Aldridge rose from her seat in the gallery. Your Honor, if I may. Judge Harrison hesitated, then nodded. Briefly, Mrs. Aldridge. Catherine walked to the front of the courtroom, her heels echoing in the sudden silence. She stopped beside Sienna and rested one hand on her daughter's shoulder. My firm has taken this case pro bono, she said quietly. Not because my daughter couldn't afford representation. She could, as it happens, since those accounts Mr. Whitmore drained were joint accounts that my daughter contributed to equally. We took this case because I wanted to be here. Her blue eyes locked onto Derek. I wanted to look the man who hurt my child in the eye and watch him realize exactly what he'd done. Mrs. Aldridge, Patterson attempted to interrupt. I'm not finished. Catherine's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Patterson shrink back. For 3 years, I watched my daughter disappear. Phone calls that grew shorter and less frequent. Visits that were canceled at the last minute. A light in her eyes that dimmed every time I saw her. She paused. I knew something was wrong, I just couldn't prove it, so I waited. I gathered information. I built a case. This is collusion, Derek shouted. Your Honor, she's admitting to conspiring against me. I'm admitting to being a mother. Catherine's gaze never wavered. And a lawyer. The two aren't mutually exclusive, Mr. Whitmore, though I understand you might find the concept of family loyalty difficult to grasp. In the gallery, Gloria Whitmore made a strangled sound. Judge Harrison raised her gavel. That's enough. Mrs. Aldridge, please return to your seat. Mr. Webb, please continue. Catherine inclined her head gracefully and walked back to the gallery, pausing only to give Derek a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus Webb cleared his throat. As I was saying, Your Honor, given the documented evidence of hidden assets, financial abuse, and coercive control, we're requesting a revised division of marital property. Specifically, we're asking for 60% of disclosed assets, 100% of the hidden assets Mr. Whitmore attempted to conceal, and compensatory damages for emotional distress. 60%, Patterson sputtered. That's outrageous. Is it? Marcus pulled another document from his folder. Perhaps Mr. Whitmore would like to explain why his company's projected revenue mysteriously dropped by 40% the month before he filed for divorce, or why 3 major contracts were transferred to a subsidiary owned by. He checked the paper, Gloria Whitmore, his mother. Gloria's gasp echoed through the courtroom. You said it was standard practice, she hissed at Derek. You said no one would find out. Mother, be quiet. Don't you tell me to be quiet. I put my name on those documents because you swore. Mrs. Whitmore, Judge Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. Please control yourself or I will have you removed from my courtroom. Gloria clamped her mouth shut, but the damage was done. The gallery was buzzing with whispers. A court reporter was typing furiously. And Derek looked like a man watching his entire life crumble in real time. Your Honor, Patterson said weakly, we request a recess to review these new developments. I'm sure you do. Judge Harrison's tone was dry. However, given the evidence presented, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Webb's assessment that this case requires thorough examination. She turned to Sienna. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to add? Sienna stood slowly. For a moment, she just looked at Derek, really looked at him. The man she'd married because he'd seemed so confident, so sure of himself. The man who'd systematically dismantled her life piece by piece until she'd almost forgotten who she was. Just one thing, Your Honor. She walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of her husband. You asked me once why I stayed, she said quietly. Do you remember? Derek's jaw tightened. You said it was because I had nowhere else to go. No money, no family, no options. Sienna tilted her head. You were half right. I stayed because I was scared, but not of being alone. She leaned closer. I was scared of what I might become if I fought back. Sienna, I'm not scared anymore. She turned and walked back to her seat, her mother's eyes following her with unmistakable pride. Judge Harrison was quiet for a long moment, reviewing the documents before her. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured but firm. This court will take a 1-hour recess to review the evidence submitted. When we reconvene, I expect Mr. Whitmore's counsel to be prepared to address the discrepancies in financial disclosure. Any attempts to delay or obfuscate will be met with sanctions. She fixed Derek with a hard stare. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor, Patterson mumbled. Court is in recess. The gavel came down like a death knell. As people began to file out, Derek grabbed Patterson's arm. Fix this, he demanded. I don't care what it takes. Mr. Whitmore, Patterson's voice was tired. I'm a lawyer, not a magician. You lied to me about your assets. You lied about the business transfers. You lied about. I paid you to win, not to lecture me. Then perhaps you should have paid me with honest information. Patterson gathered his papers and walked away, leaving Derek standing alone at the plaintiff's table. Almost alone. Megan was pushing through the crowd toward him, her face twisted with fury. You used me, she spat. You bought me things with her money. You told me she was nothing, and the whole time. Megan, not now. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually care about me, or was I just another asset you were hiding? Derek's expression flickered. For just a moment, Sienna saw something human behind the mask, something small and desperate and cornered. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation she knew so well. You got what you wanted, he told Megan flatly. Don't pretend you didn't know what this was. Megan recoiled like she'd been slapped. Then she ripped the earrings from her ears, Sienna's anniversary earrings, and hurled them at Derek's chest. Keep them, she snarled. I hope they remind you of everything you lost. She stormed out, her heels cracking against the marble floor like gunshots. Derek stood frozen, the earrings glittering at his feet. And Sienna gathered her things and walked out of the courtroom without a backward glance. Some victories didn't require words. The courthouse hallway had cleared by the time Sienna found her mother. Catherine Aldridge stood by the tall windows overlooking Charleston's historic district, her silver hair catching the afternoon light. She turned when she heard Sienna's footsteps, and for a moment, the formidable lawyer disappeared, replaced by a mother who hadn't held her daughter properly in 3 years. Come here, Catherine said softly. Sienna walked into her arms. They stood like that for a long moment, neither speaking. Catherine's hand smoothed over Sienna's hair the way it had when she was 7 years old, scared of thunderstorms and convinced monsters lived under her bed. I'm sorry, Sienna whispered. For what? For not calling, for not telling you how bad it was, for... Stop, Catherine pulled back, holding Sienna at arm's length. You survived, that's all that matters. I should have left sooner. You left when you were ready. Catherine's eyes, the same blue as Sienna's, were fierce and gentle all at once. Abuse doesn't work on a timeline, sweetheart. I know that better than anyone. Sienna blinked. You. A shadow crossed Catherine's face. Your father wasn't always the man you remember. Before you were born, before I started the firm. She paused. That's a conversation for another day. Right now, we have a divorce to win. Marcus Webb approached, tablet in hand. Mrs. Aldridge, we've received communication from opposing counsel. They're requesting a settlement conference. Already, Catherine's smile was sharp. That was faster than I expected. What does that mean? Sienna asked. It means they're scared. Marcus scrolled through the message. Patterson knows he's outgunned. He's trying to negotiate before the judge sees the full scope of what Derek's been hiding. What are they offering? 50% of disclosed assets, full ownership of the house, no admission of wrongdoing. Catherine laughed, a short, humorless sound. Counter with 70% of disclosed assets, full ownership of the house and the vacation property in Savannah, complete disclosure of hidden accounts, and a public acknowledgement of financial misconduct. Mom, Sienna touched her arm, I don't need him to apologize. I just want this to be over. This isn't about an apology. Catherine's voice hardened. This is about making sure he can never do this to anyone else. Men like Derek Whitmore rely on silence. They count on their victims being too tired, too broken, too eager for peace to demand accountability. She cupped Sienna's face in her hands. You are not broken, and you deserve more than peace. You deserve justice. Sienna's throat tightened. For 3 years, she had told herself that survival was enough. That getting out was victory enough. That wanting more, wanting acknowledgement, wanting retribution, wanting someone to say out loud that what happened to her was wrong, was selfish. Her mother made it sound like the most natural thing in the world. Okay, Sienna said quietly. Okay. Marcus nodded and stepped away to make the call. Catherine guided Sienna to a bench, and they sat together watching the afternoon light shift across the marble floors. Tell me something, Catherine said. When did you know you had to leave? Sienna was quiet for a moment, gathering the memory like shards of broken glass. 6 months ago, she finally said. We were at a charity gala, one of Derek's business events. I was wearing a dress he'd picked out. He always picked my clothes, and I was standing in the corner, invisible, watching him work the room. And a woman came up to me. She was maybe 60, elegant, clearly wealthy. She asked if I was enjoying myself, and I gave her my usual answer. Yes, wonderful party, so proud of my husband, all the things Derek had trained me to say. Catherine's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She looked at me for a long moment, then she said, I was you once, same smile, same empty eyes. She pressed her business card into my hand and walked away. Who was she? A divorce attorney, one of the best in the state. Sienna smiled faintly. I never called her, I was too scared, but I kept that card. I hid it in a book Derek would never read, and every night when he was asleep I would take it out and look at it, just to remind myself that someone had seen me, someone new. Catherine's eyes glistened. That woman gave you hope. She gave me a witness. Sienna met her mother's gaze. That's what I needed. Someone to confirm that what I was experiencing was real, that I wasn't crazy or ungrateful or dramatic. I just needed one person to see the truth. And now the whole world will see it. The words hung between them, heavy with promise. Marcus returned, his expression carefully neutral. They've countered. 60% of disclosed assets, house and Savannah property, partial disclosure of hidden accounts, private acknowledgement of misconduct, not public. No, Sienna surprised herself with the firmness of her own voice. Public acknowledgement or we go to trial. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Catherine smiled. You heard her, Catherine said. Marcus nodded and stepped away again. He won't agree, Sienna said. His reputation is everything to him. Then we'll take it to trial and let the court decide. Catherine squeezed her hand. Either way, you win. The recess ended 20 minutes later. When Sienna walked back into the courtroom, something had shifted. Derek sat at the plaintiff's table, but his posture had changed. The arrogant sprawl was gone, replaced by rigid tension. Patterson was whispering urgently in his ear, and Gloria looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Megan was nowhere to be seen. Judge Harrison called the court to order, and Marcus rose to address the bench. Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to note that settlement negotiations have been unsuccessful. The respondent is prepared to move forward with a full trial if necessary. Understood. Judge Harrison turned to Patterson. Mr. Patterson. Patterson stood slowly. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from arguing with a client who refused to see reason. Your Honor, my client would like to... He paused, glancing at Derek. My client would like to make a statement. The courtroom went still. Derek rose, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on some point above Sienna's head. I'm prepared to accept the respondent's terms, he said, each word sounding like it physically pained him. 70% of disclosed assets, full ownership of the Charleston residence and Savannah property, complete disclosure of previously undisclosed accounts. His voice dropped, and a public acknowledgement of financial misconduct. Sienna's heart stopped. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Harrison leaned forward. Are you entering this agreement freely and voluntarily? Derek's mask cracked, just for a second. Sienna saw fury beneath it, hot and impotent, the rage of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that this acknowledgement will become part of the public record. Yes. Very well, Judge Harrison nodded to her clerk. Let the record show that Mr. Derek Whitmore has agreed to the terms set forth by the respondent, including a public acknowledgement of financial misconduct during the course of the marriage. She fixed Derek with a hard stare. Mr. Whitmore, I suggest you consider this a lesson in transparency. This court does not look kindly on those who attempt to manipulate the system. Yes, Your Honor. The gavel came down. And just like that, it was over. The courtroom erupted into controlled chaos, lawyers gathering papers, observers murmuring to each other, Gloria Whitmore pushing through the crowd toward her son with murder in her eyes. Sienna sat frozen. 3 years. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of making herself small, of forgetting the sound of her own voice. And now, Sienna. She looked up. Her mother stood before her, hand extended. Let's go home. Sienna took her hand and rose. She didn't look at Derek as she walked past him, didn't acknowledge Gloria's venomous glare or Patterson's exhausted sigh. She kept her eyes forward, her spine straight, her mother's hand warm in hers. The courthouse doors swung open, and Charleston sunlight poured in, golden and warm and impossibly bright. At the bottom of the steps, a small crowd had gathered. Reporters mostly, word had spread fast about the Aldridge connection. Cameras flashed. Questions erupted. Mrs. Whitmore, can you comment on the settlement? Mrs. Aldridge, was this case personal for you? Sienna, how does it feel to win? Catherine raised one hand, and the crowd fell silent. My daughter will not be taking questions today, she said calmly. But I will say this. For too long, victims of financial and emotional abuse have been forced to suffer in silence. They've been told they're lucky, that they should be grateful, that their experiences don't matter. Today, the court confirmed what we already knew, that manipulation is not love, control is not care, and silence is not consent. She turned to Sienna. My daughter is not a victim, she is a survivor, and she will thrive. The cameras flashed again, but Sienna barely noticed. She was looking at her mother, really looking, and seeing not just the legendary attorney, not just the founder of a global law firm, but the woman who had waited 3 years with quiet patience, building a case, preparing for this moment. The woman who had never stopped believing in her. Thank you, Sienna whispered. Catherine smiled, not her courtroom smile, but something softer, older, infinitely precious. You don't need to thank me, she said. You just need to promise me one thing. Anything. Live. Catherine tucked a strand of hair behind Sienna's ear. Really live. Not the half-life you've been surviving. Find out who you are without someone else's expectations weighing you down. Fall in love with yourself the way you deserve to be loved. Sienna's eyes burned. I don't know how. You'll learn. Catherine pulled her close. And I'll be right here while you do. Behind them, the courthouse doors burst open. Derek stormed down the steps, his mother at his heels, his face contorted with fury. This isn't over, he shouted at Sienna's back. You think you've won nothing, I'll appeal, Mr. Whitmore. Marcus Webb stepped into his path, calm and immovable. I would advise you to stop talking. Anything you say in front of these reporters can and will be used in any future proceedings. He smiled pleasantly. And trust me, you don't want there to be future proceedings. Derek's mouth snapped shut. Gloria grabbed his arm, hissing something in his ear, and dragged him toward a waiting car. Sienna watched them go, watched the man who had controlled every aspect of her life retreat like a shadow at dawn. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, no lingering pain. Just peace. Ready? Her mother asked. Sienna turned her back on the courthouse, on the cameras, on the life she was leaving behind. Ready. They walked together toward the waiting car, mother and daughter, survivor and protector, two women who had learned the hard way that the quietest strength was often the most powerful. The narrator would later say that this was the day Sienna Whitmore stopped surviving and started living. But really, it was the day she remembered something she'd always known. That she had never been alone. That silence was not the same as weakness. And that sometimes, the most powerful revenge was simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. As their car pulled away from the courthouse, Sienna's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations, I told you someone would see you. Sienna smiled, thinking of an elegant woman at a charity gala, a business card hidden in a book, and the moment she'd realized she still had the power to choose. She didn't reply to the message. She didn't need to. Some things didn't require words. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever felt invisible, powerless, trapped in a life that wasn't yours, I want you to know someone sees you, someone believes you, and your story isn't over. Hit like if Sienna deserved that moment on the courthouse steps. Comment below. If you had one sentence to say to someone still trapped in a situation like this, what would it be? And subscribe, because every week we tell stories about people who refuse to stay silent. Until next time.